And once I've read and I've comprehended what the source says, I have it there for reference. So I'm just going to show you some of the things that I kind of picked out on my own annotations. You can add them to yours if you would like. But let's look at this together. So this says, at the dawn of the millennia, something quite remarkable happened across Eurasia. More or less simultaneously in China, India, the Middle East, and Greece, there emerged cultural traditions that spread widely, persisting, okay, meaning like continuity, persisting in various forms into the 21st century and have shaped the values and outlooks of most people who have inhabited the planet over the last 2,000 years. So I'm just going to take a step back and think about like, what is this saying? So I actually had like a whole bunch of evidence actually like pop up in my mind as I was reading that. So I want to get it down on paper. So the first thing that I see right here is that he's really talking about the development of belief systems as being this really significant continuity for 2,000 years, okay? So I'm just gonna note that. He's saying here that there are many belief systems that emerged that have been continuously impactful for long periods of time on how humans are interacting. And the reason why he says the word cultural traditions, but cultural, one of the biggest pieces of culture is religion and belief systems. So religion and belief systems. And when I was reading this, my head was going to, as soon as I saw China, I was like, oh, yes, like things were emerging and being utilized. In China, there was Confucianism. So I'm gonna note that as one of my outside pieces of evidence. Confucianism. Then India, I'm like, oh, Hinduism and Buddhism. I've learned about both of those things. Middle East, Islam. I know I've read about that. Greece and all around the Mediterranean, Christianity. So I'm going to put that down too. So I've got a lot of evidence here about traditions that spread and remain important for long periods of time in people's lives. Down here, what is the relationship between belief systems and the circumstances in which they arise? Like, when do belief systems become more prominent or spread? In the case of cultural traditions, many historians have noted the tumultuous social changes accompany their emergence. Meaning, when life is difficult for people, we tend to see more people turn to belief systems, or we tend to see those belief systems spreading amongst the people who are living in difficult times. So I'm just going to kind of put that in my own words. Difficult times or hard times, tumultuous times, lead to an increase in prominence and or spread of different belief systems. And if I think about that for a minute, I'm like, what things might have been hard for people? Well, I could think about like the Warring States period in China, or the fall of different dynasties like fall of Tang, fall of the Song, and the rise of like the Ming, and how that dynastic change is accompanied with the growth of Neo-Confucianism, because Buddhism came in and people were like, oh, there's Buddhism and there's all these things happening in my life, and then you see the Neo-Confucius come in and be like, and here is this new system, which really wasn't that different, but it spread significantly. So I'm like, I'm going to note that for myself. I also remember reading about Christianity and it spreading across all of the Mediterranean at the same time that the Roman Empire was falling. And so that must have, that definitely was a tough time. There were little wars happening all over the place, right? Society is like crumbling. And so people are turning to Christianity. So I'm just going to note that. Fall of Rome and increase in Christianity. Okay, so I've got a whole bunch of stuff written down. I know this now. So I have examined this source. Now I'm going to go look at the prompts. So you are going to write your SAQ responses right below the source today, okay? Because we won't use the bottom part of this. So you're going to write your responses right down here below. So A is super short. A says, identify one claim of the author. Now this is very simplistic. It doesn't say identify and explain, but I do have to identify and just sort of put my own words to what one of their main claims is. So identifying and sort of putting it in my own words, explaining. You could pick either one, okay? This one or this one, they're both big ideas that are being presented by Strayer. So let's kind of write this one together, okay? I'm going to use the author's name. So I'm going to start A by saying, according to Strayer, and then I'm going to let you fill this one in on your own. According to Strayer, what? In your own words. What's one of his main ideas? I don't care. You pick which one you want to say. Can you read us what you created?
Yeah, I wrote that according to Strayer, hardships and difficult times lead to a rise in police systems.
Great. That's awesome. Okay, fantastic. So A's done. Okay. Yeah.
So it's more of a general statement. You don't have to specify one kind of thing in the claim.
Wait for it. You're gonna have to do that on part B. Okay. So sometimes you'll be asked just what's the claim. But when we look at part B here, okay, identify and explain a historical development that supports is the important part, supports the author's assertion in the second paragraph. So this is where I'm going to go to the second paragraph and I'm going to go, okay, what was the main idea in this paragraph? Now, what I've just shared with you was this sort of main idea. But as I look at this, the author is asserting that difficult times or tumultuous times in history lead to an increase or swelling of support or followers in different belief systems and or their spread. And I want to start my response for part B with that. I want to anchor myself and my response in what the author is saying, because this is asking me about the author's assertion. That's where the prompt ends. The prompt ends with the author's assertion. So that's where I'm going to start. This is where you're going to turn to your how-to SAQ, and you're going to look at what a more complex response is going to require of you. You're going to start with the main idea of the source, okay? The main idea presented by Strayer is this. The second part of your SAQ response is going to be you providing a piece of evidence, a historical development in history that is going to help you in construction of your response. So this is where I'm going to go and I'm going to look at what outside evidence I have that might be able to help me in my response, okay? I'm gonna pick one of those pieces of evidence, I'm gonna write it down, and I'm going to define it, okay? In the case of what I'm being asked here, the historical development is probably going to be a belief system, a religion or a belief system, okay? Because that's what he's talking about. He's talking about religions and belief systems. And then I have to think about how that piece of evidence supports the author's assertion, okay? That's going to be my third part of the SAQ. I provide the main idea of the author. I come in with evidence that I define, and that third part is my explanation as to how this evidence supports what the author is saying. So whatever my evidence is, okay, Christianity, Neo-Confucianism, maybe I could talk about Buddhism. I've got to define that term, but then the important part is going to be where I describe how that specific belief system or religion is gaining followers or growing because of the tumult that's happening. All that difficult part of life. How is that creating an increase of support for this belief system or religion? So those 3 steps of the SAQ are what you're going to practice right now with your group, okay? Main idea, that's like a sentence. Your evidence that you define, it's a sentence, okay? You're going to underline your KBAT term. And then you define it. Where the bulk of your writing is going to be is in that last part, where you're bringing that evidence back to the prompt full circle. Because when you're looking at an SAQ really has these 3 component parts to it always, okay? You've got a prompt, you've got a source, right? So here's what the source says, okay? Here's me. You are the third part. You've got the evidence. You have that historical knowledge. And you've got to tie that back to the prompt, okay? So you want to bring all those 3 things together. So that's what you're going to do with your group right now. Which time do we have? Perfect. I wanted you to have about 5 minutes. So in 5 minutes, we've kind of talked our way through this. Let's see how much of your response you can get done with your group. Okay? Ready, set, go.